So we will hit on those things that are on the agenda for this morning, since you saw that, but appreciate very much your adaptability and commitment to kind of going, trusting the process here. So our values. So one of the things, we talked about open source, talked about intentionally relinquishing control. Again, really what we mean by that is just offer the opportunity to lead to others. Don't try to control everything, right? Yeah?
To tell you the truth, I don't understand open source.
Okay. So how about this? Can I give you a couple more examples? That'd be cool. Okay, open source. Everybody seen the, during the 2008 elections, the kind of iconic face of Barack Obama on that poster? They're kind of like colored in, right? Do you know who created that? Shepard Fairey. Did Shepard Fairey work for the Obama campaign? No. He just did it, right? He just did it, and he took the actual Obama logo, put it on there, and then sent it to the campaign team, and it became like the thing that they shared with everyone. Right? And the idea was that they just allowed their supporters to take the collateral, the stuff that they had, and said, use it however you will, and go forth and do good in the world, right? And like organize on our behalf. And were there also things created with Obama's logo that were mean?
Yeah.
Using the font, of course there are, right? Of course there were. By people who don't like Barack Obama. That was fine. Which one do you remember most? Yeah, sure, right? There's all these different ways you can see. Which one do you remember more, Shepard Fairey poster or the stuff that was not good? Yeah, there's like a global iconic thing, right? Another great example is the Howard Dean campaign in 2004. These are two Democratic examples that have actually been traditionally better in the last couple of campaigns at open sourcing their collateral. All of their bumper stickers were basically just ones that supporters made up. What do you think about our governor, right? And what do you have to say about him and why is he great? Here's our logo, we'll slap it on there, you can print it out and you can put it on your car. Now, it didn't cost the Dean campaign any money, they didn't have any money, right? And they open sourced what they had to allow anybody to use it and move forward with it. So kind of thinking about Firefox as an example, right? The company Mozilla started that, and they said, here's an idea we want to put out there in the world, and what we actually need is here's what it is at its heart. And we'll go all the way to the heart, right? It's a tacit acknowledgement that you yourself or your team cannot succeed with the big goal you have without engaging lots of others. Right?
Yes.
Mozilla recognized they could never compete with Microsoft, who has tens of thousands of engineers with just 10 people, right? In order to compete, they had to open it up to tens of thousands of volunteers, who are also engineers. But they couldn't hire them. They couldn't pay them, $200,000 a year as an engineer, as a software programmer, right? But they could open it up and say, this is a cause that we're going to create, and we're going to take on the big guys by doing this, right? By making it part of who they were and making it interesting and compelling, right? And now we've got a great story to share, which is inspiring. And now we can all kind of say, like, oh yeah, that's what open source means. Does that help your understanding of
Yeah,
open
it's
source?
not complete, but it gives me a more, but it seems to go with intentionally relinquishing control too, because because I mean, I see the battle as, it's interesting too, because I had a conversation with Peter Arno about it too, is that I see the problems on Earth from the beginning, and Americans Elect, for me, and that's part of my personal story, Americans Elect is actually part of what's a vehicle for changing the consciousness of a problem that's been on Earth forever, which is the battle between, or it's sort of a battle between freedom and control. That's what I see, that between freedom and control.
I think that's a really
and
great story. Yeah.
Okay,
that was great.
So that kind of goes with that, right? That's
Absolutely.
What you're,
yeah. I mean, it's again, we do not have the resource, like the financial resources, to hire 10,000 organizers. Right? It's just not going to happen. We just can't. Right? That's a fundamental.
So you just give people the freedom to just go forth and.
Yeah, it's also about giving away your personal tools, your resources for a greater good. A lot of us have a hobby or a skill that we can charge for. But open sourcing it allows for us to work together and put our unique perspective on things, our own resources, and say, I want to donate this. I want to donate my time because I really believe that this is worth it. This is worth more than the money I could be making by charging, an organization. I'm willing to give this up because I believe in the organization. In this example, the organization is Americans Elect.
Yeah, over here.
Michael from Alaska. I think that a big part of open source that's pretty self-evident too is the fact that the source code is open. So, I mean, literally everyone can look at it. It's completely transparent, which serves two purposes. When there's flaws, it's right there and it's solved quickly, as opposed to waiting months and months for Microsoft or whoever else to fix it. And two, obviously, you can't hide anything. There's no, in computers, there's no malware hidden there, or in politics, there's no, weird clauses that are going to kick in that we don't see, because everything's there for all of us to view for.
Right. So just to kind of work with that analogy, if you don't mind, in that contrast, right? If you have a problem with your Microsoft software, you have to submit a bug, right? Or the little thing pops up on your screen, and you're like, do you want to submit this or not? You say yes, and then you have to wait for an engineer to fix it. Yeah. So open source software, again, this is just a software example. There's a bunch of examples of open sourcing things, even just photos, right? What's called Creative Commons or whatever. But the idea with open source is that instead of waiting for Microsoft to fix it, you can just do it. You can just fix it. You can just make it better, and then you can offer it to everyone else that, hey, I made this better, right?
Oh.
Does that get to the air?
Yeah, I feel some lights going off.
Awesome. Yeah, so it's basically like saying, look, this is open to anyone to edit. Right? And this document or this whatever is like not perfect yet, but if you have an idea of how to make it better, you don't have to tell someone else how to make it better, you just do it.
It's like a co-creation.
Yeah, it's exactly.
Yes. Absolutely, yeah, right.
Okay.
So is the software for the website open source so that people can't do SQL injection exploits or something?
Great. So we have a bunch of techies in the room. No one knows what that means. We have 10 people. So great question. So one of the big questions we get often, and again, did we get a thing set up? Corey can actually ask you to just take a flip chart and put it on the wall. We're going to create what's called a parking lot. Do we know what a parking lot is? Some of the Portlanders, we often call it a bike rack.
Things that we're going to talk about later.
Things we're going to talk about later. Yeah. So the website, as Americans Elect, is not open source fully. There's some code that is. There's a reason. And it's mostly because it has to have bank level security, right? Because we have to have a secure voting platform. So there's a good reason for it, but it's not. Now, there are some open source things that we've created. There's a Tumblr page. There's some different things we can actually work with. And there's a bunch of things we can just do that are independent of the big AmericansElect.org, which are just different on the web. But that's a good question, Jim.
What would you like to talk about?
Website.
I just wanted to comment. I'm Jim from Washington State. I just wanted to comment that I'm an open source software developer.
Awesome. So we actually have one. Anybody else a developer in the room? Clearly, some of them at least know it.
I don't think they heard you.
Yeah. So Jim is an open source software developer. It's just awesome. I mean, it's just a great, and that's kind of the interesting thing about Americans Elect too, is that it attracts a lot of different types of people. Okay, we're going to move kind of forward, but people generally get what we mean by that, right? Is that when you have something, you put it out there and say, hey. And Americans Elect has a bunch of great examples of this already, especially from the college team, but also from others. So we just gave them, say, here's the logo, here's the font, here's whatever, and they made posters from their campus, right? So Ohio State University made one about making fun of University of Michigan. Awesome, right there. Ohio State hates Michigan, Michigan hates Ohio State, great, play up on the rivalry, and make a poster about that. That's way more effective and way more contextualized, way more personal, right, than if we had said, here's the poster that everyone has to use, everyone use this one and put it up. Now all of a sudden it's interesting and compelling based on the people who are actually there. Cool? Yeah? All right. Again, the nods are so great. Okay. I'm going to go through these a little faster. I'm sorry. The idea of failing hard. Anybody heard of Wieden and Kennedy? Wieden and Kennedy? Really?
Yeah.
Can you tell everyone who they are?
Wieden and Kennedy was started by an immigrant who came here with nothing and is now one of the largest marketing companies in the United States, handling clients like Nike and others.
Wow. That's like the best. That's like the best, most complete synopsis of Wieden and Kennedy that I've ever heard. That's great. Yeah, so everybody heard of Just Do It?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes.
Okay. You're not heard of Just Do It? They did Just Do It, right? Like they're the company and the firm that did that. And one of the things that when you walk into their offices, which are actually in downtown Portland for the folks that are from Oregon, I used to work across the street and had some friends there. And there's this big sign. It says, fail harder. It's like 12 feet big, right? It is huge. And the idea is not that they want their campaigns to flop, clearly. But the idea is that they're taking on big ideas and they're challenging people. They're taking on ideas that need changing, systems that are big and different, right? Sound familiar? Yeah. So the only way to take on something big and different and to do something that has not been done before is to try things that have never been done before, right? Does that make sense? Somebody mentioned Einstein earlier. We had somebody from back there, and I think, Montana, you mentioned Einstein. One of his great quotes, anybody know about consciousness, his quote on consciousness and problems?
Oh, yes. This is one of my favorites of his. He said, problems are never solved on the level at which they're created.
You guys hear that? You can't solve a problem with the same consciousness that created the problem, right? You can't solve a problem of party leadership. You can't solve a problem with the way the government works with party leaders, right? And that's why, is anybody here a party leader? No. Well, you've been. Maybe I know.
But not the traditional party.
Not a traditional party. All right, so let's say this. Republican, Democrat. But the point being is, you can't solve the problem, right? So you actually need to try new things. That's really the point. You are required. We can't do it unless we try new things. Yeah?
You know the definition of insanity?
I do, but why don't you tell everyone?
Anybody know? Yeah, basically expecting a different result by doing the same things or some form of that.
This is a Ben Franklin
doing
letter.
The same thing all the time, expecting a different result.
Ben Franklin wrote that to his father in this great letter where he said, for everyone who may not have been able to hear, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing again and again and expecting a different result. That sound familiar? Ever heard of a change election in the media? Right? Oh, this is a change election. We're going to change everything by doing the exact same thing we did 2 years ago, and 2 years before that, and 2 years before that, right? Every election since 2006 has been a change election as defined by the media. How has that worked out for you guys? Yeah, nothing's changed, right? So the idea of trying something different. Now, what I mean by harder as well is that you can fail cheaply, quickly, and adjust, right? Like that's what that also means, is that you can try something, if it doesn't work, you can quickly adapt and try something else. Right? So the value is we have to try some new things. We have to try a lot of new things, some of which will not work, and that's okay. So laugh, learn, and adjust. That's kind of the value here.
Yeah.
Transparent in real time. Does anybody need a definition of transparency? Right?
No.
Right. We're all pretty much on the same page there. As leaders, what does this mean for you personally? Right? As you go back in your communities, you then become a representation of Americans Elect. That's what's going to happen. You guys will be leaders on behalf of Americans Elect, on behalf of yourselves, maybe if you're a candidate like David. That's fine. Being transparent about what you know and letting people know as soon as you know it is kind of what we have to do. Right? So you may not be able to answer every question about Americans Elect. That's okay. You don't have to. As soon as you don't know something, ask other people. This is a team now, so maybe somebody else knows the answer to the thing that you don't know. Right? And if we can answer, then we'll just be honest and transparent about that, but doing it in real time.
Like streaming.
Like streaming, yeah. So this is transparency, right? If for instance, if let's say people who are scared of Americans Elect now wanted to know how we were talking to leaders across the country, guess what? We're totally transparent with it. We're totally open sourcing this. Anybody can take these ideas and do whatever the heck they want with them, right? Anything that you guys are saying, other people can work with too. No problem. Yeah.
There was like a thing going on with Americans Elect, and you guys, not you, but like just Americans Elect in general, they wouldn't tell people who was sponsoring them. I don't know if that's still an issue,
Yeah.
but that I think is a big deal in terms of transparency.
The funding you need to have.
Right.
So I think that's a bigger conversation. So we're parking lot it and actually talk about it after lunch because I think it's a great question.
Just while you're on the parking lot, can you add the candidate?
Yeah, I'll just get anything more. Yeah. Absolutely. So one thing I will say is really interesting, and I know Kellen will talk more about this because it's kind of more of his thing than mine in some ways. But on the money side, I used to work in government transparency. I worked for a group called the Sunlight Foundation, which some of you may or may not have heard of, some not. So like, you can imagine how important it was to me. Like literally I spent years talking about financial disclosures of candidates and who's giving what to whom, right? So that's kind of where I came from in some ways before Americans Elect, and it was extremely important to me. In fact, I had a 2-hour argument with Khalil Bird, who's the CEO, in March of last year, in which I like went to town and said, this is why candidate or people must disclose what they're giving. And I'll just tell you, for what it's worth from me, this is just my personal story. This is not telling you this is how you have to look at it. But here's where I came around to, and believe and understand at this point differently. One is that Americans Elect is a nonprofit, which is different than a candidate election, which is interesting because, for instance, like if you go work for Habitat for Humanity, like your first question isn't who funds it, right? It's kind of like, I'm just going to go do this thing. There's a really interesting part, though, that comes when it actually comes time to have a candidate, and I think it's the most interesting part. And that is, once a candidate is selected, once the nomination happens, they won't know who made it possible for them to get to that point. Now think about that for a second.
That's important.
It's important. And here's a contrast. Newt Gingrich, which has been public in the news, I have nothing good or bad to say about Newt Gingrich. It's just a fact that a guy named Michael Adelson just gave him $5 million to a super PAC.
10 now.
10 now, yeah, that's right. This is the second time with $5 million, and ultimately is committed to giving $20 million, right, to basically fuel Newt Gingrich's campaign. This is not to his. This is totally like it's only public because it's in the media, right? That's the only reason, because he publicly said he would do it. There's no disclosure rules that allow for that. Now, do you think when Newt Gingrich gets into office, if he did, big if, sorry. If, for instance, he became president of the United States, and the guy who gave him $20 million to give him to the primary makes a phone call, do you think Newt Gingrich is going to answer that phone call? Yes. Right? Of course he is.
He'll be governor of the moon.
What?
He'll be the first ambassador to the moon. Absolutely. Like there, of course, there will be that. Like, not only will he probably take a phone call, he'll be in and out of the White House, right? That's a very likely scenario. So when a candidate from Americans Elect emerges, this process that will have propelled them to that point, they won't know the donors that made it possible. Now, the other thing that is really interesting about Americans Elect is that every dollar that's spent is audited and on the website and is disclosed. So there's a difference between knowing how the money got in and also then knowing what happened with it. Right? So if you know how the money is spent, at least you can say, it's not perfect. And I'm not going to say, like, personally, I'm with you. I would rather know who every donor is. I want to know for every nonprofit that I give money to. I want to know for everything, right? That's my personal value. I also know, and actually knowing some of the donors who've decided to give and not disclose who they are, that they've made that decision to support this as an act of courage. Like, I'm going to do this despite the fact that I've been a lifelong Republican or a lifelong Democrat. And I think this is more important. I don't want everyone to know that this is the choice that I'm making. But I want to make this possible for others. So I think that's pretty cool. And we can basically look at the audited financial statements and say, $15 million to go into ballot access. That's just how much it costs. Like, it just costs that much today because of rules that have been put in place to get on the ballot. That's true. And then to build a website that is bank level security and to build the teams and to do things like this, it just costs some money. So anyway, that's just my personal story. This is not an explanation of all the money things, and I'm going to take a couple questions, but we'll probably have to come back to this. I'm just letting you know that that's a personal story of a big transition over the last year for me of being a huge, like, I only like it if it's totally transparent, to, okay, I can get what we're doing with this, and this is why it might make some sense. Is that useful at all?
Yes.
It's useful. Okay.
I like
cool.
that. That's
Cool. Yeah, right here.
Yeah, my name is Bill. The legal answer to that question may not be the PR answer that you want to give, but the laws are designed for a particular reason. And Americans Elect does not have to disclose who the donors are because of the purpose of it. It is not engaging in electioneering right now, so the laws don't require to disclose those things. And it's like if you're building a park in a particular community and someone donates to build a park, maybe all the neighbors there, some of them won't like the park because they don't want all the kids coming in. And they'll say, well, I want to know who's contributing to this park. Well, the law doesn't require you to disclose who that donor is because the government and the people have an interest in disclosing only for particular issues. And since we're not electioneering, there's not a requirement to disclose. And there may be a PR reason to disclose it, but legally you're not required to, and there's reason for the law to be that way.
I think that maybe, I'm not saying that it's a legal issue, I'm more saying that if I'm going to put trust into something that either I'm putting money into or something, I would rather know. Or a political party, whatever you guys want to call it, if you're saying that you're nonpartisan or you're neutral, I want to know that you're not getting contributions from other political parties. Like
Right.
that's my main.
Yeah, and I think that ultimately is the thing, right? Like this has to be, people don't join something if they don't make the choice to lead with you and with us unless they can trust it, and that's what we have to address. I think it's a really valid, important concern. Okay, we got 6 hands up. Let's go boom, 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 over here in the next one. So, yeah.
All right. My name is Ian Beer, and this is just, and correct me if I'm wrong anywhere in this argument that I'm making, but when I've spoken to people, when I've spoken to people and I've tried to tell them about Americans Alike, I've had sort of like conspiracy theorists come up to me and say, you know, this is you're trying to split the Republican vote, or you're trying to split the Democratic vote, and this is just me, and like I said, correct me if I'm wrong anywhere in this, but from my understanding is if, let's say, hypothetically, we're funded by a leftist organization. If that person is giving us money, or the candidate money, he or she would want to ensure that the candidate would win. Now, my understanding is that once the Americans Elect candidate is chosen, Americans Elect steps away. So we have no way of ensuring the victory of that person. And I've tried,
the only thing Americans Elect can do, just law-wise, and again, you can address this a little more later, legally, the only thing the actual organization can do is to create ballot access, to get a space on the ballot for some name to go, and to run a technology platform that allows other people to make a choice of who their candidate's going to be. That's the only thing we can do. It truly, Elliot and Khalil and everyone else will go to jail if they try to promote a candidate. Like they cannot do it, or else there will be very serious legal repercussions. So I think that's it's a good point, and we'll at some point, if we don't, remind me. We'll come back to this idea of ballot splitting. Vote splitting. Yeah, back here we had a hand. Yeah.
Bruce, how about something like the range of sponsors, number of people, some kind of anonymous representation of that demonstrates the broadness of the grassroots effort or absence thereof in terms of funding, something that would, without giving out names, that would give us an idea of where the finances are coming.
So the idea of an audit board, typically of trusted Americans, potentially big names as well as some grassroots supporter, is something that we've talked about a lot, and I think is actually going to happen. What you can know is that the finances have been audited by Deloitte & Touche, which is a major accounting firm. So you can actually see the audited financial statements. They are on the website, so you can actually share that, which is often really useful. But the idea to get Colin Powell and I don't know some other people that generally Americans trust to look at the actual donors and say, there's no corporations, there's no PACs, there's no political parties donating here. This is just individuals who want to change the system. Is an idea that is moving up because of people like you speaking up and saying it. So thank you, and know that people agree. So yeah, Aubrey had her hand up.
Back to your PR question, I've tried to run into that, and I run into that a lot. Is the funding, because that's in politics. Everybody wants to know where they're getting their money, because that's eventually what's going to come out as a result, right? Sorry, I'm not a very loud speaker.
Who are you?
I'm Aubrey, by the way. And so I think what I've come to understand is that you can't keep doing the same thing and expect a different result. And so that's kind of what American Elect is doing, is trying not to understand where the money is coming from so that we get a different result. And we get funders that will dump money into a thing that they don't have their name out there. Because I think that's a big thing, is everyone is you know, either Republican or Democrat, and so they're trying to like support a different cause, so we get a different, you know, like result. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, it makes sense, but I just feel like the transparency is completely what our government isn't about. So I feel like what you're saying is doing the same thing, expecting the same results. Being completely honest and trustworthy and transparent is something that we have not done in a really long time, especially in the past decade. So it's kind of like we wouldn't be doing the same thing if we're like, look, we're not scared. If there's people like, I'm talking about corporations. I'm not talking about the people who are, you know, the Republican Party, like, or anything like that. I'm talking about like big corporations that I'm worried about and that have flawed our political system as it is.
What's your name again?
Ariel.
Ariel, can I come back to you in about 20 minutes? And I want you to tell that story again. Okay? Remind me to do this. So I think what I hear from a lot of people, right, not only in this room but also just around the country, I think this is a story we all share, is that there's a deep distrust of what the political system is right now and where it is and what's influencing it. And I think that's kind of part of a lot of the reason why a lot of us are here. Is that fair? I think.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So, yeah, got some dramatic arm waves because it's just really deeply part of it. So here's what I'd like to do. And what was your name? Tanvir. Tanvir. I was like, that's why I can't read it. Tommy from here. I was like, I can see an R in there too. So what I'd like to do is kind of, if we can, take a quick comment and then move into the next section, because I think most of what we're going to do in terms of building leadership and responding to people is going to really come out of the basis of this next section. So that's why I want to come back to you, and also to kind of address some of these other questions that people have in the context of what we're going to go through next. Is that okay? Is it fair? Okay, real quick, yeah.
So a real-world story about protecting the source of the money. The reason why Ron Paul's running for president is because he ran, or actually he helped with the John Birch Society fund a libertarian candidate for governor of Texas. That's why Rick Perry hates him, and they removed his district, and now he's SOL.
SOL?
Never mind. And and then the second part is it possible to get like a live database dump of maybe like anonymized vote tallies or of like account books, so that I could say, for instance, go and say, oh, my ID number is 12345, and that is indeed how I voted on a spreadsheet somewhere. Or be able to say, oh, well, this is, you know, what they spent money on specifically Tuesday.
So can I stop? Sorry, I don't want to.
Go ahead.
Only because it's a really awesome question and a really awesome idea, and no one in this room can address that one. So what I'd like to do is take that question and then take it to the tech team.
Okay.
And say, is this something that we can consider? Because I know it's been on the table, something like that. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm put in the parking lot for now, but don't, like, a great thing would be to send an email to
Okay.
Colin afterwards. Okay. Yeah, Montana.
Okay, so this is, and this, we don't have to cover it now, but I'm just going to bring it up because it relates to the conversation that's been going on here, is that when I was working outside with the public, like, I was talking to like hundreds of people every day about this, and this, it really, there is a deep distrust, for sure, and I tried to be as open as I could with people, but what I started to do, because they kept going, well, the funding, and there were all these conspiracy things coming up. And what I started to do was go, wait a minute, you don't ask Greenpeace, which is because Americans Left is a nonprofit, you go to Greenpeace and go, okay, what are your donors, you know? Americans Elect isn't, so it's like, there seems to be it's like creating a new understanding necessary of what this really is, so that people can really grasp it, that this isn't like there's no political agenda in the way that they think there is.
Right.
That this is a nonprofit, so maybe this isn't the time to do that.
No, that's great. And actually, again, so that's a great segue, in fact. Again, not the thing you read.
Because it was
a little funny. No, not really.
Because Ariel, she brought that up, and I was like, that was the question that I wanted to put, but there's a little bit of a different increment that I'm,
That's great. And so what we're going to go through right now is how you not only talk to people who are new, but also how you address issues. Is that cool? And I'm going to ask you to trust me, because about the first 10 minutes you're going to be like, I'm not sure where this is going, but I promise it's going to come full circle.
Okay.
Is that cool?
Yeah.
You guys trust me enough to do this?
Yeah.
Okay. I wasn't quite so sure about it 2 hours ago. Okay. So, one of the things we said is share compelling stories, right? That's something we can do in order to actually get a whole lot of people to work with us. And I know people have been through the training before. This is, by the way, a lot of this is grounded in the work of a guy named Marshall Gans, who is out of Harvard Kennedy School. Somebody who's done a lot of trainings around the U.S. and kind of organizing and movement building and campaigns. So I promise I'm not the only one to, these are kind of my personal things, but a lot of this comes out of the work of a lot of people who are very highly respected and actually used by political campaigns too, so you can kind of know it's not just coming from a dude named Jake that you've never met before. Right? So this is, in some ways, what we're trying to get people to do, right? We're not actually trying to, so we used the example of Habitat for Humanity before. Has anybody been on a Habitat bill? Anybody been and hammered nails? And okay, yeah. So, sorry, what's your name again? Andrew. Andrew, so you went and where did you what did you do with Habitat?
Well, it was really like, we were just sort of the ground troops, and there was an organizer who was like, okay, you guys do this, you guys do this, and then each had small tasks that eventually.
Awesome, right? And did you do this in college or now? Yeah. In high school? Perfect, right? Why did you go?
Partially because everybody else was sort of like an obligation, but also because it's cool to network with those kind of people. I don't foresee doing things like that.
So partly because everyone else did anybody ask you to go? So somebody asked you, a system or a person, yeah? Anybody else been on one? Yeah? Did somebody ask you to go? No, you just went on your own? Awesome. How did you know about Habitat?
I was going to Zambia and I wanted to do some.
Cool. What about down here? You said?
Just organized some people at work and we went, same thing. There's a foreman on the job and gave us little tasks and we got a lot of work done that day.
Awesome, right? And did you feel good?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So here's the thing. Going and doing the work of being the ground troops is not Habitat's goal. I'll tell you. What is Habitat's goal? Okay, so what's that? Build houses. Why?
It's affordable. They're trying to raise the standard of living for people because that feeds back into the
Shelter is a basic human need.
Shelter is a basic human need. What I mean? Why? Why? So if shelter is a basic human need, why don't people have it?
Well, because it's being treated like a luxury item. It's not a luxury item.
Okay.
That's why we have what we have.
Awesome reason. What else? Like what are other reasons? Yeah, that's great. Like why don't people have
money?
Money,
yeah.
or a job, or they're homeless, right? They're kind of like that is a reason people are homeless. So what's interesting about that is the idea of getting someone to go on a Habitat build. That I can tell you for sure that it actually costs Habitat for Humanity more money to have you come and be the labor than it would be if they just hired a crew to do it on their own.
Really?
Yeah.
Mistakes.
What's that?
Mistakes.
Right? Mistakes, or if they had like some serious volunteers who were like actual construction workers and just did it. So like, do you have construction background, Andrew? No. Are you a carpenter, roofer, electrician, plumber? Right? Okay. None of those things, and yet you could go out there and help, right? And you actually did something that mattered. Now, what really mattered most is that they actually gave you a way to get involved in the idea of providing a home to someone who doesn't have one. Right? That was a catalytic experience. But you can volunteer, but the volunteerism is not the end goal. The mission, the goal is to like end homelessness. Right? They want anyone, anywhere to be able to live with a roof over their head with dignity and respect. Right?
Yes.
They want to end homelessness. Great. They are not going to end homelessness by getting a bunch of people who don't have the skills to build homes to go hammer nails. Right? That is not the goal. But what it does, ideally, with a group in particular, and it doesn't happen the first time sometimes, it maybe not happen the second or third, but eventually somebody else steps up and says, I'm going to organize because I believe in this and I want to make a positive impact in my community because you've seen that there are problems, right? It gets you to ask questions. That's what the volunteer experience actually does. It's catalytic. It actually gets you to say, what's going on here and where did this come from? Right, where are you from, Andrew?
New York.
New York. So, are there homeless people in New York? Right. Silly question. Right, there's homelessness in New York, but does it have to be that way, right? Like, what is the next set of questions that you can ultimately ask? And so the experience of going and seeing with your own eyes and smelling with your nose what it's like, and being in a different part of town maybe, or being with a different set of people who you would not otherwise be around, gets you to start to see the root of the issue which you then, if they do their jobs, moves you with a group of leaders like that you went with your school, or maybe that you organize yourself to say, okay, there is homelessness all around us right now. That is unacceptable in my view, and I'm going to do something about it. Right? And now, Habitat doesn't even need to be involved anymore. You did it on your own. Right? Habitat didn't need to ask you to do it. You just organized because you don't think it should be the case that there are people without a roof over their head in your town. Amazing act of leadership, right? If you think about it at that level.
At the same time, if that's economically inefficient, are you not simply spreading economic inefficiency?
Well, to go with that, so if that's Habitat's mission, right? If it would actually be cheaper in many ways, just to get some volunteers, like almost like Mozilla, right? And instead of just getting anybody, just getting engineers and just getting carpenters, what would that do to the overall mission? Narrows it tremendously, right? So now, how many people have heard of Habitat for Humanity, even if you've never done a build?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
How many people, and you know what it is, so even if you just read about it, it's now already a trusted institution that even if somebody just asked you, hey, I'm going to go down to Habitat on Saturday, you know what it is, you know how to get involved, and you know what it is that you're ultimately trying to do, right? That only happens because of people like you guys who have gone and volunteered and been involved and then share it with others. And so many ways, the leadership that you are providing as leaders of Americans elect is about catalyzing this experience, this choice, right? You are trying, the leadership really at its heart, and this is a definition that's not mine, is just the choice to lead, like the choice to step up and act. Right? That is leadership. That is an act that you are offering someone to be able to do. I'm saying it again and again and again, because I really want this to sink in. And you're trying to catalyze this process where ultimately people around you act on their own without your input. Right? If Americans Elect started with 10 people in an office, like that will not grow or do anything unless other people around the country, just like everyone here, starts to take ownership of it and do it on their own, beyond any ask or control or anything from the national office. Yeah.
I just want to bring something up. And I'm not saying that this is going to happen, but I've seen this. We've all seen what America's concept of leadership looks like, and it hasn't always been. It's called leadership, and it hasn't always been pretty. And so I guess I just want to. I'm not sure if it's a question or a statement, but I just want to say that being really clear about what we really, and if there is a sincere intent to authentically lead, that's great. But I just think that the time for individual will is over. Like, the man on top of the mountain, that type of thing. So in saying leadership, I think we need to be really clear about what we, like not asserting our individual will of what we think that, like not individual will, but more of a collective vision of what leadership really is, more of a sharing kind of thing and something that comes from the heart. And I know that Americans Elect, I wouldn't be here if I didn't think that's what it was, but I'm just saying maybe a little bit, could we be more clear about what we're saying? Do you know what I mean about leadership? Because leadership, what it looks like out there in the we're leading. Well, but they're not even representing their constituency, us. It's like the 1% trying to represent the,
Absolutely. So does anybody share Montana's sentiment? Just raise your hand. Like kind of feel kind of what she's feeling. Okay. So I'll offer back and thank you. This is what we mean, right? This is how we will lead. This is what we're saying. Kind of like these are our values. This is when we step up. This is what leadership looks like. It looks like a relinquishing of control. It looks like a co-creation with others. It looks like, right? So that's what we mean in our group by leadership. That's kind of what I think we've been talking about so far. But continuing to clarify that is going to be really important. So I appreciate you bringing that up. Again, people who are, you're offering the opportunity to take action on something that matters, right? That's what you can do with everyone you know. You can invite people to do as you did with Habitat, right? To join you and say, this is something that we can do together. And that's what we're trying to get people to is this point. So my issue of using this little 4 things, which I've got much prettier slides and that kind of thing in other places, not in this flip chart, is that this initial thing is often what you're offering to people. right? And sometimes all it is a catalytic experience, or being a volunteer is just a conversation. Sometimes all it is the opportunity to have been heard and listened to by somebody else. Yeah?
Would you please just read those?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, you can't see for crap over there, can you? So the idea of kind of walking through this would be, well, let's take an example, and that'll kind of hopefully do your thing. Let's say I'm going to use a college student. If that's okay, just kind of to start. College student sitting on the couch and playing video games, going to class, going back from class, going to parties at night. That's kind of like just existing and being a member of a campus, right? That's a member. There's nothing wrong with that. That's just what they're doing. They're just hanging out. That's cool. They're kind of just doing their thing. That's like stage one, right? And then somebody, let's say, asks you, somebody you know, somebody you trust, somebody whose opinion you respect, asks you to join them in doing something. Going on a habitat build, could be going to a different restaurant, like whatever it is, right? They're asking you to do something with them. And that experience, that is kind of the next stage. You actually go with that person, the member, the kind of person just doing their thing, gets out of their chair, stops playing their video game, or stops watching TV at night, or whatever it is in the context that's not college, and does something else because of that invitation, right? It's an invitation to join, to act. And then because of that, right, after the fact, so you now are back from going on a habitat build, you're now back from a volunteer experience of something else, you're now back from going to dinner, whatever it is, and you're starting to ask questions. I just went and saw someone who didn't have a home, and I tried to help them build it. Why does that happen in my town? Right? It's because the stage is called conscientiousness, right? You're starting to say, what are the socioeconomic factors here? What are the historical factors here? Was there always homelessness in my town? Right? Did this come from somewhere? Did it start at some point? What happened that made this the way that it is now? And asking those questions. And once you ask them, making the next transition to say, okay, this is the way that it is. What can I do about it? What can I do about it? What will I do about it? What is the most effective thing I can do about this? How can I invite others who are here to join me in doing something about it? Right? So it's kind of it's not just a one-time thing. Did anybody have to go through a process of asking questions before they showed up here today? Yeah. Right? Did anybody not have to go through a series of questions? They might have just like immediately saw something and said, I'm going to California. Anybody? No? Actually, last training, somebody was like, yep. I was like, great. 1 in 50. Awesome. Like, that's actually great. That sometimes will happen, that they go straight from there to there. Usually that's because of their own personal experience. They already know a lot of things that are happening. They're like, this is it, right? Boom. Most of the time, that will not be the case. Yeah?
My name's Heath from Bakersfield. I think that was kind of the case. I don't know. I stumbled upon Americans Elect just by Googling, will a third party ever matter? And somehow I brought it up, first choice. And I clicked on it, and immediately I was like, okay, this is it. I want to get involved with this. I had that feeling.
So the catalytic experience in your case was the fact that it showed up in a Google search. Like
Yep.
somebody had to do that, right?
Yeah.
Like somebody had to be smart enough to offer that possibility, right, in the space of a Google search. So that's something that is happening, right? That's why some of your online work that you guys are doing, when somebody searches for Americans Elect, they see a comment or a blog post or whatever, and that turns out people like you, right? Yeah, right.
That was really similar to what happened to me. I was on Facebook and I saw one of my friends like shared the link and I was like, this is interesting. I clicked it. And then after like a minute of like just surfing the site, I was just like, oh my God, this could actually work. And I really want to try to get involved. That's why I'm here.
And again, I'm part of my French. I don't know if anybody cares or not. You care if I swear?
No, I don't. Go for it.
But somebody in the last session like they all had they called it the oh fuck moment. They're like, oh fuck, this could work, right?
Yeah.
That was their words, not mine. I'm just saying that was how they framed it, and I thought, well, if that's what it takes. So, here's how we can do this all the time.
Okay.
So, what you guys have just told me, two of you, and actually even more, is your personal story, right? And the story is actually also a narrative that exists even beyond your own personal thing. So you saw it on the website that's kind of telling you how this could work, right? That's kind of a compelling narrative instead of facts or information about what's happening. Then you have meaningful actions you can take, right? You could actually do something about this right then and there. You could say, I'm going to sign up as a delegate, and I'm going to put my name in to become a leader, and somebody's going to contact me, right? So the meeting thing wasn't just action, it wasn't just a silly, like, whatever, it was something you can do. So they know. Now, here we are, and now you're not by yourself, right? There's actually 50 other people, or 55 other people, who are with you in this, right? So now, we will be different than you by yourself. Your ability to come people, that's a community. And all of this is basically just what we call engagement, right? The ability, the combination of how stories, the interaction, and community can move people forward together. And this is also really grounded when we go through when you guys do it. But you may know what ethos, pathos, and logos are.
How do you are you
close, that's good. Nikki, as well.
It's the logic behind your argument, the credibility that you present, and the passion that you provide.
You said real loud?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Three appeals necessary to communicate an effective message. You require logic, which is necessary. You require credibility so that your audience can take it saying seriously, and you need the passion and the emotional appeal to persuade.
Yeah. Did you guys hear that?
Yeah.
Right? Logic, emotion, and basically morals or ethics. And that is the reason I bring it up as a Greek thing is because this is like really old. Right? This is not a new idea. This is something that's the only thing that has truly moved people from their core for a long, long time. And the idea of American life about it is, are you guys passionate? Do you have emotions about the state of things? If and when we have passion about what we do, it's lots of ways to move forward in order to act. Does American life offer that? Yeah, very lots of things mapped out on the web, right? Do this, do this, do this, do this, about that, do website, do this, do this, do this. Very lots of very analytic or analyze. Move forward, right? And does it feel like a moral purpose or cause? Like something that you believe in, right? Yeah, absolutely. All of those things. You guys are offering like the perfect combination of things to others in order to kind of get them to engage them and to get them to move. So here's where we dive into stories, and this is what comes back to that other thing. It's grounded in the whole thing is where you are coming from, right? And if you don't know that, like almost nothing else will work. Anybody seen Indiana Jones in the Last Crusade, the third one? I'm going to pretend that there's not a fourth one. So too much alien. That's all I'll say. So what happened in Indiana Jones in the Last Crusade? The third one was Sean Connery. Remember what it was about? It's a search for the Holy Grail. And so his dad, who's Sean Connery, has this Grail diary. Anybody remember what was in it? Sorry, that's the question we're going. There was one thing that was not in the Grail diary. Do you remember what it was? So they found that, right? There was a word, and they found that there was one thing. There's 40 years of stuff research into this thing, right? In this Grail diary.
The starting point.
They knew everything except the starting point, and everything else was rendered completely useless. 40 years of research meant nothing at all because they didn't know the starting point for that. Right? And so in many ways, what your story is the grounding